Hi guys, I'm Darren, welcome back, and in this video I'm going to show you a non-destructive method to always have this power button active. You never need to use this balance plug again. So let's check it out. So I guess I'm not the only one that's been in this situation. You plug in your balance port, you press the power button for the fan, and nothing happens. And as you can see, I've taken quite a few measures. I've 3D printed a little black thing here on the balance plug to pull out. I've hot glued it, but these connections, even though I've got all this protection on, they're still pretty weak. So if I grab multimeter, you can see it's only getting through about 20 millivolts, so nowhere near the 7 volts I guess this is going to be. Yeah, 7.5 volts that is coming out of this. So these connections are notorious for going wrong, and it's because they're not really designed for all this constant unplugging and plugging back in. So before I go any further, if you've got an HDO2 set of goggles, you don't need to worry about this. But with HDO and before, certainly with any of the Dominator series, this mod will work. So basically, we're going to permanently put a balance plug in here. It's the simplest way of doing it. And the way to do it, so that it's non-destructive, is just behind this strap. There's a little air vent, and we can bring the wire up just through here and straight into the balance port. So before I go any further, this does involve opening up the goggles, so could void the warranty. But as I say, it's non-destructive, so there's a good chance you could take or reverse this mod and no one will be any the wiser. Also, this little orange thing here, it's not, just so you know, I've not actually started the mod on these goggles yet. This actually broke off at the weekend when I was trying to search for a plane. It just literally fell off in my hands. The screw thread inside broke. So if any of you guys have had that as well, I'll put a link to the Thingiverse for this on there, so we're all covered. So what I'm going to do is actually make a new balance plug up. So I've got some connectors. I've got 22 gauge, which is a bit thicker. This is probably about 26, 24 American wire gauge, probably 26. But I'm also I've got some paracord just to make the whole thing neater and easier to put together. So that's all we really need, and a soldering iron. So the first step is to take the goggles apart. So the first thing that we need to do is remove the faceplate. Now this should just be a case of gently pulling it off. You'll hear little clicks like this, but it's just the clips freeing up and releasing. And so just do it gently and it shouldn't break. Ooh, there we go. So as you can see, it's all off, there's nothing broken, it's all in one piece. So we can put that to the side. The next thing we need to do is remove these 3 screws. Now this is using a PH0 size Phillips screwdriver. So just undo those. This one's actually recessed a little bit deeper, but if you've got a long shaft screwdriver you'll be fine, but with one of these little multi-tools you can wangle it. It's just a bit of a pain in the ass. Next I'm going to remove the module. You could have done this earlier, but and now what we need to do is separate the 2 halves. Now this is the part that could be the hardest. There's basically little clips inside it. If you push down on the nose, you can see it separating there, and then it's just a case of working around. That's the other cover. And you see it's actually separated now fairly simply. I think there's just one at the front which actually I'm sure there's 3 at the front. So just push in gently and it separates. So again, there's no need to use massive force with this. And now if we lift it up, there are a few cable connections we have to look out for. That's the worst one, that side is the ribbon, but we're all good. I'm actually going to disconnect that to make life easier. So now we can separate the 2 halves. We can untwist that, get it a bit longer. So what we're going to work with is this area here. So if I take out my Trinity module, there's a screw underneath. So we just need to remove this screw. Actually, we could disconnect that plug once the board's out. So we'll unscrew this. That'll lift up and disconnect just to make life easier. Put this over to the side. So what we have here, if it will focus, is our power board. And this is where we're jumping the power from. So we have a pin at the back, which is our positive, and you can see the pin coming out the side, which is the negative and attaches to that piece of metal there. So what we need to do is solder our connections onto these pins at the bottom. So what we can do to just double check everything is plug in our power supply. So we put that board in. Now we'll grab our multimeter, just put it on our voltage setting, and what we should have is, if we put the positive on this back one and the negative on the side, we have 7.5 volts. So we know that that is the correct polarity, and they are the 2 pads that we need to use. So now we know what our connections are. We can remove the power supply, get rid of it, and what I'm going to do is just solder on some leads onto here. Just going to get out enough wire so we've got plenty to play with. Alright, as I say, the wire I'm using is a bit thick. It's 22 wire gauge. Ideally around 24, 26 would be better. So I'm just going to tin these up, and then what we'll do, we'll have a quick look here. And what we want to do is bring the cables out the side, so they just come out this side here. So that means negative, we can just solder straight onto there. And the positive we put behind it, so on this pin that's sticking out the back. There we go, soldering done. So it's quite nice and neat, close together. So now what we're going to do is just temporarily put this in here so we can eye up how long we want our cable. We could actually screw this back in now. I'm just going to leave it loose just for the time being. So I could actually take, that's got a board in the top. So roughly, let's just balance that on there. This is going to be longer than we need, but that's fine. We need our cables about there. So I'll do is cut them here. This is probably going to be too long, but we can trim them down later. So let me get a measurement. So from the module, we're looking at basically 100 millimeters. So what I'm going to do now is you can sort of see where it's going to come out. On the case, we've got this opening here, which is mirrored on both sides. That's where it's going to come out of the case, and then just loop round above. So I think what I'm going to do now is put the paracord on. Not tried this before, so it could be really fiddly. So let's put that on. Cut it to about here. Oh, that's much better. I used to use the black expandy stuff and that was horrid. I'm going to chop that end off. It's been sealed, so it's less flexible. Could always seal the end with a bit of heat shrink later if we wished. Yeah, I think I've left it short because I think we're going to have to cut some off. But now what we can do is put this back together. So we need our... So here, make sure that the second hole here is lined up when you tighten this screw up. I think that's going to be just about the right length, as that will squeeze out the side, up round the top and in. Alright, so Trinity module, because that'd be so much easier like this. So we put our twist back in that. And we connect back up our video, or the video receiver input board. I bet that comes out easy actually. Ooh, bollocks. So that's all back together. So now what we can do is put our goggles back together, just making sure that all the wires are inside neatly, we don't trap anything. Especially the one to watch out for in particular is this video cable here, that traps up underneath in there, and then just make sure that the black cable in there is neatly stored away, and then it's just a case of making sure all the clips line up. Something not quite right there. So take your time with this, no rush, just make sure everything is right. Right. The IPD hadn't located. Now that side's being a pain. There we go. So make sure you IPD adjusters work. If they're not located, it won't click together properly, but that seems to be the best way. Just get it all parallel and then just squish it together as one piece. But you can see where our cable comes through. So that cord comes up on the inside there, and then it will come up here around the case and in. This would probably be a good idea to clean your goggles at this point, because it's nice and easy to get at. Again, we've not actually taken the lens unit apart, so you shouldn't actually have any dust inside it. But that's... Right, so the next step, it might be a better idea to put the strap on first, because the strap can be a bit of a pain. So obviously we've got one side with a special loop in for the battery, so that will go in here. It's more this side I want to get in because of the extra cable now. There we go. So you see the strap fits, no problem. Actually, yeah, it'd be easier to do this without the faceplate in. So there we go, strap back on. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's put the screws back in first, so we don't need to take this apart again. Alright, so now we can get our faceplate back on, which is just the opposite. It's just going to be clipping it in. And what you want to do is get this side in first. We just need this cable to come out here at the side and click in. Oh, I did actually break my faceplate, but it's in the middle. I think it'll be absolutely fine. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, just be very careful when you remove your faceplate. So now what we need to do is just trim these to length and then put our balance lead on. So what I'm going to do is I want this really nice and neat. So I'm going to cut these off. Let's get some heat shrink first. That'd be ideal. I just want it really small. So let's get that over the paracord. And then I'm literally going to cut these off about there, which will make the crimps a bit of a pain in the ass, but it should look nicer when it's finished. I'm trying not to release the paracord too much, because I've noticed every time I sort of squish it back down again, it's actually undoing it a little bit more. So I'm trying not to move away from that as much as possible. So I got these crimps and all the actual, well, the crimpers and the crimps from Hobby King, and they do all sorts. They do servo connectors, as well as the balance plugs, JST plugs, everything that you could want if it's in stock. So that's our plug. So now all we need to do is just follow the same wiring for this. So if the open is towards us, the positive is on the bottom and the negative is on the top, and the little clips face outwards, and then you need to click them in place, but you could use a blunt screwdriver, or I'm just going to use my scalpel. Just push down on the metal part, not the cable, and it should click in. Yeah, so unfortunately you can see it's frayed away a little bit, but what we'll do is we'll heat shrink that one, and maybe we can trim the outside away a little bit. It'll do. It doesn't actually move much once it's in. Alright, so what we can do now is just test that it's working. So we can plug our battery into the FatSharks. So FatSharks are working, my head tracker's got power, I can see the light is on for the SD card, that's all good. So now what we want to do is just check these power terminals here, and we should have 7.5 volts. If I can get it on there. There we go, 7.5 volts. So now we know it's all working. All we need to do is plug this into here. And that is it done. So now when we plug in, all we need to do is push this button and our fan is working. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it. So I switched it off and you can see it's just started back up again. So that's all we need to do now, is just plug this in, unplug it, the fan will work when we push our button. No more faffing about with these balance leads that always break. And as I say, if you do have any issues and you need to send your goggles back, you can just take it apart again, unsolder the 2 connectors on the bottom of the barrel connector, and this will all come out, and then you know it's back to how it was when you bought it. So I hope you guys have found this video useful. If you have, a thumbs up would be great. If you'd like to be alerted for new content, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and we'll be doing more videos in the future. So thank you very much. Fly your models like you stole them, and I'll see you on the next time. Bye bye.